That's Sister Mary Beth Lloyd. Sister Mary Beth works with orphans around the world and serves as an inspiration.
If you don't have faith, you can't have hope, and without hope, there's no future.
The goal is to raise $1 million for orphans.
I'm a religious teacher of St. Lucy Filippini, and my work, I'm the International Mission Director, and we have missions in Albania, Ethiopia, Eritrea, India, and Brazil.
How did you become a nun?
When I was a junior in high school, I was in a Catholic high school. My mother and father said they didn't have the money to keep me there because I had 3 brothers, and in those days the boys got the education, you know. And so I said, well, what if I got a scholarship somewhere? And I got a scholarship where the Filippini sisters were, and when I met them, I knew that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life. They were so good, and it was a girls' school, and I knew I wanted to do something like that the rest of my life.
Describe what you and your organization do in these different countries.
We're teachers everywhere. Our title, Maestra Pia Filippini. Maestra means teacher. Pia, holy, hopefully we are. Filippini, St. Lucy was her last name. We're teachers. We have schools everywhere we go, but we try to concentrate on young girls. It's a hard number, but there are 66 million girls under 13 who are not in school at this moment. So we try to open as many schools as we can so that young girls will get a chance to have a life of dignity. Albania is a little country across from Italy, and it was for Catholicism. In 1949, it was the first country to ever have in the Constitution, there is no God. So when we arrived there, it was really very difficult, and the nuncio said, don't even start schools because the people are so upset from all that has gone on. And so for the first 3 years, we just helped as much as we could. And they also advised us, don't help the teenagers because they were so wild, and there were no 10 Commandments for 50 years. So to kill someone in Albania or steal or anything, you know, it just, everything went crazy. I had to park the van, and I found a young man who spoke a little Italian. And so I said, you know, I have to park the van. And he said, oh, he said, no, he said, it's going to be gone by tomorrow. And if not, all the parts will be gone out of it by tomorrow. I said, well, I really have to put it someplace safe because we need it, whatever it was. So he said, all right, we'll find a place. So I'm riding with this young boy that I didn't even know. And, you know, we're in this van and we're driving out through Albania. But we found a place, and he goes, it's going to be really very expensive. I said, okay. It was 75 cents.
Oh, wow.
And I really wasn't in danger. It was just in my head that, you know, I felt that way. What one of our sisters did is she started Scouts. But to be a Scout, you had to sign your name. And they had never learned how to read and write. And we had maybe 50, 60 kids near the convent. So Sister said, well, if you want to be a Scout, to sign your name, you'll have to come for lessons on how to write your name. And so that's how we got them to come. And they'd come, and she taught them how to write. So then they joined Scouts, and with Scouting, she was able to get the math in with the compass and different things like that. And all different ways she was able to teach them. Ethiopia, we're in Adigrat, the Horn of Ethiopia, and we're right on the border of Eritrea. We're also in Eritrea, in Asmara and Tukul. And what we do there, the same, we have schools, but in Asmara we have a school, it's a school for war widows. Ethiopia and Eritrea had been warring for years, and when they finally won their independence, we found a lot of women who had lost their husbands during the war and had no way to make money. So we started this school for war widows in Eritrea, and it's been our saving grace now because Eritrea is going through some hard times, and they've allowed our school to remain open, whereas they have closed many of the other schools. In Ethiopia, where we are in Zalambasa is right on the border, and it's been bombed, and they blew up our school. It was sort of nasty. We built a brand new school. They had never had a school in this town of Zalambasa. We built it, and 1 year to the day, they had bombed it and totally destroyed the whole school. But the people in the town, they said, we will not rebuild our homes till the school is rebuilt. They were that angry, you know. So they rebuilt the school before they even built their homes. And so the children there have a good school. In Adigrat, the main town of this region. We have a very large school, 800 children. We have orphans. We have 700 orphans. Their parents have died from AIDS. And what we do is we pay the oldest girl to come to school, because if she doesn't get paid, she has, I say oldest girl, sometimes it's 10, 12-year-old girl. She has 5 or 6 siblings to take care of. So if she doesn't get some money, she's going to go prostitute herself for anything to make some money. So we pay the oldest girl to come to school, and she gets her 8th grade diploma. What's interesting in Ethiopia, you have to get your 8th grade diploma. If not, you can't get a car license, you can't buy property, sometimes you can't even get in the hospital. So you need the 8th grade diploma. But they need more. They need skills. So they have 21 other skills that they learn. There's agriculture, poultry raising, beekeeping. There's even one course called housekeeping, and you get a certificate, and there's a special graduation. And when I first heard of it, it was like the Wizard of Oz. You know, you're getting this diploma for housekeeping. But if you live in a hut where there's no bathroom and you sleep on the floor, you don't know how to clean a bathroom, you don't know how to polish the dining room table or anything like that. So we have the course. The sisters teach the girls how to do this. And when they graduate with that certificate in any hotel in Ethiopia, they get a job instantly. They're preferred over any other people who apply.
Well, let's clarify a bit what AIDS Orphans means.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that is sweeping the world, and there's very little press for it. But this year in Ethiopia, there'll be 470,000 new orphans from AIDS. What it means is that the mother and father have died from AIDS, and the little children are left behind. And for years in Ethiopia, the children that were orphaned would stay with a grandmother or aunt or uncle, but they have died too. It's just the strangest situation when you go there. There are just children. In one of the villages that we're in, we have 1,500 children, all under 13 years old, and the mayor is 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's got 5 cameras. 11-year-old mayor. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
I think what I admire most about your story is your courage to go into these countries that some may consider dangerous. Where does that come from?
It's obedience. You're always safe with obedience. So our sisters are there. Sisters Filippini, her motto was to be in every corner of the world. And that's what we try to do, to go where the children and the women need the most help. And you're right, where the sisters are, I come and go, so in that sense I'm very safe. But the sisters who live there all the time, in one of our missions, you know, you hear the Doctors Without Borders, they laugh because they're afraid, you know, it's a dangerous area. So we have the hospital, and so what the sisters, they go every day and they'll bring soup or some bread or something for the people that are dying in the hospital. They don't really go to the hospital to get better. There's no medicine there. They go to the hospital really just to die.
So let's talk about your running.
We're helping AIDS orphans, all right? Every 3 seconds, a child under 5 dies from hunger. We hope to raise $1 million. If everybody does one thing, even if you don't have money, if everybody does one thing to help the children, whether you run, maybe you play the flute, something good, do good for the children.
You ran all 50 states.
I did. I was lucky. A woman, Lisa Smith Batchen, who has helped us for years running, she'll run 300 miles and then raise money and give it to us for the missions. She decided for her 50th birthday she would do the 50 states. And she said, "You come with me and she'll do 50 miles in every state and I'll do 20 miles in every state."
So Sister Mary Beth, when Lisa came to you, now be honest with me, and she said, "Okay, I want you to do 50 miles in 50 states," did you go, "Oh boy, I better start praying for some serious speed right now"?
Took about 2 minutes.
I did pray for it. And I said to her, when we came to America, we went to Trenton, New Jersey. And then we made the mother house in Morristown, New Jersey. So I said, well, if we Google the distance between Trenton and Morristown, if it's 50 miles, God wants it.
Aww.
And we did it, and it was 50.2 miles. And it was amazing. It took us 62 days.
62 days.
62 days, yeah.
That's quite a feat.
It was very, kept moving, kept moving. Every morning we had something. Mikey would wake us up at 4:30 and throw us out of the RV, and off we'd go and do our thing for the day. And then we'd always give a talk about the missions and the children and the orphans and explain to them. to the people who would come. We had a captain at each state, and they would provide, you know, a bunch of people who would come and listen to our story, and it was good. We were able to get the message out about the children. Faith is always, yeah, and that's what keeps the sisters going too. How can you survive in these places where we were speaking of Zalambasai, Ethiopia? The sisters there, they have tremendous faith. This is a great story there. We had gotten some cows from the Heifer Society, and they broke loose. But the problem is that they live on the border, and what had happened recently was that the soldiers were tying notes to the tails of the cows and sending them into Eritrea with the notes.
Oh,
and
wow.
the Eritrean soldiers had figured that out, so whenever a cow would go over to the other side, they would shoot the cow, get the note, and have a barbecue, and, you know, the note would never get to the people it was meant to get to, you know, for harm's way. So when our cows broke loose, Sister Letty was very afraid they would shoot our cows because they were just wandering. So she took, there are 800 kids in the school, she took the 800 kids in the school, and they walked hand in hand, and they walked along the border, and they're all soldiers there with machine guns and everything. She walked the children right next to the soldiers, and then they slowly corralled all the cows back into where our field is. So she's very brave, and she has tremendous faith. And her name, Letty Selassie, is the daughter of faith. That's her name.
Sister, let's talk about your book, AIDS Orphans Rising. How did you come about the title?
Rising, the numbers are rising, but also we want to help them to rise out of the awfulness. In Ethiopia, when the mother and father died, the children fight to stay together as brothers and sisters, and it's called a child-headed household. So you'll have a little girl 10 years old with, you know, as I mentioned before, 4 or 5 siblings. And so what we do is we actually rent a home for them for $3 a month. We actually get, it's a cement box with a dirt floor, but to them it's home, because there's so many. We can't put them in the orphanage. In the convent, we have an orphanage near the convent, and we take the children who are very small. What's happening now is that Mother Teresa's sisters take the infants, and when they're 3 years old, then they'll bring them over to us. And so that number is also rising.
In the book, you mentioned grandmothers will be the ones to save Africa.
Yeah.
Can you describe that statement?
Yeah. One grandmother I met, she had 10 children, and her 10 children got married and had their own children. Well, today, her 10 children are dead from AIDS, and their spouses are dead from AIDS, and she has over 100 grandchildren that she's taken care of.
You also mentioned in the book that the international community was pretty much hands-off between the years 91 and 97, deciding to focus on a cure for the disease rather than helping out the orphans. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a very sad thing, and you know, it wasn't maliciously done. They really thought the scientists would find a cure for it at that time, and so they didn't worry about the children, and you never heard anything about the orphans, and this is what happened. And now, even now, it's very rare that you'll see an article in the news about the orphans.
In your book, you describe the orphans as very hardworking and resilient. Where does that work ethic come from?
Yeah, I think it's from their parents too. They work very hard, and they're not wimpy. What I'm very impressed of, when a new orphan will show up in school, the kids just accept them. It's not, oh, my mother died from AIDS, my mother and father died, you know, from AIDS. It's more like, suck it up, we're all here together and we're going to get through it. It's something very beautiful, you know. They don't dwell on it, you know. Once in a while you can see a kid in a corner feeling sad, you know, and then the other kids will console them, or the sisters will console them. But they are tough. They know they're going to make it. India. One number I read is that this year in India there'll be 4 million new orphans from AIDS. New ones. And, you know, you say orphan, but until you see a kid that's filthy dirty, maybe has been beat up and hungry, you know, you don't really get the idea of orphan. It's really something. And one of my favorite orphans that we have from India, we were driving along a highway, it was like 95, I mean, a very fast highway. And what he would do is he'd jump across, he'd do flips, and then all the traffic would stop. And then he'd come off with his hand like this to collect money, and then he'd flip out into the weeds again so nobody could get him.
Really?
Yeah, so when we saw this happening, all right, so when he got close to us, we watched, and when he did his flip, we grabbed him and put him in the Jeep and brought him home with us, you know, and he's very happy with us, you know. He was so little. I don't know how old he was, 5 or 6 maybe.
So dangerous.
Dangerous, and that was how he's surviving, you know. And you know, the Slumdog Millionaire, you know, if they thought that movie was good, where do they see the next one? All the orphans that are out there, just incredible. One of my favorite places is called Sienna Home, and it was actually a New Yorker, Bob Marsica. He was an real estate man in New York, and he's passed away since then. But his little girl was very sick, and to honor her, he gave us the money to build this place called Sienna Home. And it's for the orphans, the AIDS orphans that we have in India there. And one amazing story, you know how you say divine providence, Catholics, we believe that God's going to provide. And so these 5 children had started walking from about 20 miles away, and they kept walking because they heard of Sienna Home. And they walked, and as they walked along, they picked up other orphans, and by the time they got to Sienna Home, there were 60 of them.
Wow.
Okay, now I have to backtrack a little. A few days before, a man sent me a check for $14,000, and then the bottom he said, do good with this. So I put it under my blotter. I was in Rome at the time. I put it under my blotter, and I, you know, just see what happens. So we get the call. The sisters in India call Mother General and say, 60 orphans just showed up. What are we going to do? Because they already have 200 in the home. And so Mother General very calmly, you know, she says, well, figure out what it'll cost to get the beds and nightstands and, you know, how we can help them close whatever it is, and fax me what the amount would be. And so 2 days later, she gets the fax, and so she calls me in and she said, I have this fax for the orphans in India. It's rupees, can you change it to dollars? And I said, it's probably $14,000. And she says, how do you know? Because I said, well, because I have this check. And we did it, and it was like $13.99, you know, it was just amazing. So God provides that way. Never worry about money. God, if you're doing good, God will provide. Brazil. We have several missions in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, where we help battered women, we help young girls who can't get started, but my favorite mission there is one, it's 2 hours south of Sao Paulo, below Santos. And what's happening there, the only thing in town are bus station and bananas, and what's happening there is that the mothers bring their little girls to the bus station to sell them to men. And so what the sisters have, we have started a mission there. We started the mission in '92, and what we do is we go to the bus station, and a man will buy a little girl, and we watch, and when he buys the little girl, we go up to him and say, well, what did you pay? And he'll say, well, I paid 5 reals for her, which is like $3, and I'll say to him, well, I'll give you 10. And he'll, you know, he looks at you funny, and he says, yeah, you can have her. And give him the 10 reals, and then we're able to save a little girl, you know. But we have, I think this year we have 78 of them, and they all have been through the same awful hell. They're 6, 7 years old, and they haven't made their first communion, and they've been through such awfulness. And it's all because of the AIDS, and there's this urban myth that if you have AIDS and you have sex with a little girl, you know, it's gonna, it'll go away. You know, it's just something so horrible. So this is something beautiful that a group did. There was a group of runners, they ran, there's a 135-mile race through the jungles of Sao Paulo. 135 miles, a pretty long race.
Wow.
And they dedicated it to the little girls. And from the earnings from that race, they raised enough money to build an auditorium for the little girls so they can have a great place to play.
Sometimes it seems like their situation is hopeless. How do we combat that negative image?
Yeah. It's not hopeless. Many groups nowadays are doing things like micro-lending, but they only lend to adults. So here I'll get my plug-in for micro-lending for children. Even in the United States, you can't get a bank account or a loan in the United States unless you're 18 with a signature from the parent, all right? If you have to have that signature. And my argument is, you know, if you're 17 and you're doing fine and you want to buy a snow shovel and you want to get a loan or whatever, you can't do it. Same in Ethiopia. There's no way for them to get a parental signature. And yet, you know, they have a business where they're making pizza. All they need is money to fix the coffee machine, and they can't even get a loan because they don't have a parental signature.
What sort of work do you do when you're here? in the U.S.?
When I'm here, I'm begging, asking for funding, but in a sense of just presenting the work of the sisters and what the children are doing. And if you give people the true story, that they will help you. And I try to explain to them where the money goes, because a lot of time people ask you for mission money and you're like, well, where does it go? And sometimes people are not as transparent as they should be with their money, whatever it is. And anytime you give the Filippini missions, 100% of your money always goes to the children. We have a pensione in Rome. It's like a hotel, and any money we make from that we use for any expenses, administrative expenses. So if you give me $10, I can buy 400 rolls for the children. Nice rolls that you get at Subway. It's just incredible. $3 a month I can rent a home. The money goes far. It's just that the volume of children is what really is the hard thing. And then every once in a while, you know, you have to build a building or something. Like we have a new one going in the state of Andhra Pradesh. There's a place called Munagalapalli. There are 300 families. No one's ever been to school. It's a perfect place for us. And it's the Redemptorist Fathers have invited us, and so we're building a brand new school there, and it'll be a school, but it also will have a shelter for the girls because they're having similar problems. In that part of the world, people live in huts, and they have a rule or whatever that anyone walking through a village at night can sleep in any hut they want, and so the girls are not safe at night, and so we're building not an orphanage, but more of like a hostel for the young girls, safe environment, safe home for them. This year there'll be 67,000 new orphans in America. These are the numbers that you can read from the UN. And where are they? Well, we're lucky we don't see them because we have foster care. But they're here, and they're all around us. And sometimes the foster children, as they get older, you know, maybe because what they've been through, they're not as good as they should be, so the foster parents are not as kind, or maybe they're just ultra strict with the kids. So then these foster children will run away. So a lot of your runaways that you see, Covenant House and things like that, are children who were orphans from AIDS. And the terrible statistic that Covenant House came out with last month is they did an interview, 100,000 of their children clients, 50% of them prostituted themselves because they couldn't find a safe place to sleep. So in America, we need a safe place for children. If they run away, where are they going to go at night? You know, there has to be some kind of system where they would be safe. So if anyone out there is thinking of doing some good, that might be one good thing you could do.
How do you convince someone to run who has never run?
Hardest part is out the door. You get somebody out the door and just walk with them, and then say, you know, let's just run to the first pole, and then we'll walk after that, and then gradually, you know, that's probably the way that has worked for me.
So someone's a lifelong couch potato.
Yes.
How do we get that person out the door?
You take them to a pretty place and say, isn't this nice, you know, and say, let's walk over here, and say, okay, we're going to do this every day. And you walk a little, and then you run a little, walk a little, run a little. Once you forget how nice it is outside because you're inside all the time, and you forget the morning air, the wonderful feeling of the morning air.
What's your time in the 100-yard dash?
30 seconds.
Well, that's great.
Oh, I'm not a dasher.
You're more of a marathon
I'm more of a
runner.
slugger. Yeah, I finish.
That's the important part.
That's the thing, finish, right. Thank you.